verse 4 last week. And if you guys remember, the writer is Solomon, the wisest man who had ever lived, the one who God had given wisdom to, in which he could have asked for anything. He could have asked for more wealth. He could have asked for prosperity. He could have asked for anything. Yet he chose to ask for wisdom. And in his wisdom, he's imparting to us some of it. That he's asking these big questions of life. And there's a lot of these big questions in this passage. A lot of these questions that we actually have to take a couple of moments and think about on our own and discuss. Sometimes he gives us an answer, but sometimes he says, basically, think about this. Well, what about this? And so let's pick up in that type of discussion in verse 5. The sun rises to end, and in filling it with more, one projector is working one time, filling it with more and more stuff, always filling up our time. From the time we wake up till the time we go to bed, there's something to be done. It's that, as they say, chasing after the sun. And the realization, though, is no matter what we do, the sun's going to rise and the sun's going to set. That it's not under our control. That as long as I've been alive, the sun has always risen and the sun has always set. It has nothing to do with Chris, and each and every time it rises and sets, another day passes. I was quickly reminded when reading this verse, the first thing actually that came to mind is a song from the 70s. Yes, young folks, the 70s was a while ago. A song from the 70s called Time by Pink Floyd. And in this song, it's basically talking about what Stacy has worked at Disneyland. And it's just seemed as though that was yesterday. On our way back from picking Hannah up from camp, we stopped at I had unfortunately forgot to grab some cold medicine, and the girls were already in the car, and I said, I'll be right back, so I had to run in the dollar store, pick up some more cold medicine. As I'm checking out at the register, the machine beeps and says, well, you need to ID this guy for the medicine. It's their policy that they ID, make sure that someone's over 18 to buy medicine. She looks up at me and goes, yeah, I think you're older than 18. I said, what, is it the grade that's giving it away that I'm older than 18? Oh, you're just a few days older than 18. It's okay. You don't. Experienced. And in this song, Time by Pink Floyd, one of the verses, they say, and you run to catch up with the sun, but it's sinking. It's always faster than you are. You can never catch up to the sun. You've almost got it. It sneaks up behind you and another day dawns. The sun is the same in the relative way. In other words, it's always coming up. It's always coming down, but you're the one that's changing. But you're older now. The sun keeps rising and setting and looks the same, but now you're the one that's older. Shorter of breath, and that you're one day closer to death. hard words to kind of swallow when you really think about, folks on the internet saying the internet connection's crazy, but sorry guys. That we're one day closer to death. That, as I talked about last week, it's not very long after we're born that our body is not making more new cells than other cells are dying. That is the definition of death. That we realize that each day that passes is special. There's not going to be another day that is like it. And yet, as we are going to talk about in the rest of this passage, Solomon understands that. Solomon is in fact going to challenge us to make each of those days special. Not just to run after the sun, not just to continually to fill it, but instead to value it. First fill in the blank this morning is the sun rises and sets and returns again. Verse 6, the wind blows to the south and turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. What's interesting about this is written roughly 1,000 years before Christ. And yet Solomon understands the different wind cycles and patterns. That it changes from season to season. Just like this week, with each storm that we had, came from a different direction. One of them came from our northeast to southwest, and the other one came from the southwest going northeast. That the winds brought these storms different directions. And yet that's what Solomon is recognizing here. Something that actually wouldn't be apparent in quote-unquote science until 1964. James Maxwell is being credited as the one mapping the world's air courses and currents and how they change. It just quickly reminds me of how our scientific community well, it's talking about the wind here and how it works. Well, let's take that idea and now let's study it. Let's see actually out how God's creation works, rather than saying that it came from nothing and that it's all random chance, but instead looking to the creator of the world and going, well, how does it work? We find out that the winds have paths or courses. Fill in the blank number 2 this morning. The winds, paths, or courses. Verse 7, all streams flow into the sea, yet the sea is never full. To the place the streams come from, there they return again. This is talking about the moisture cycle. Something Hannah was just learning in this school year. About how the streams go into the lakes, into the sea, and the water with the heat evaporates and goes up to the sky, and then rain brings it back down. And again, same way with the water that comes from the sea is filtered in and through our plate tectonics and comes up through the streams again, or through the mountain systems. The volcanic system heats it up, helps to purify it, and then pushes it back out. All of this we think is a modern understanding of the moisture cycle. And yet, the reference to it actually comes from the 16th century. A guy named Bernard Palissy came up with a theory or an about the moisture cycle right here in verse 7. Streams flow into the sea, and then the place that the streams come from get refilled, and the water returns again. that a lot more wisdom than I think we understood. Not only just about who God is and about why we're here on earth, but also about nature. Also about nature. All things are wearisome, verse 8. More than one can say. The eye never has enough of its seeing, nor the ear its fill of hearing. All things are wearisome. When I was taking Clark down to the pharmacy to pick up some more of his antibiotics, our discussion went to, in seeing some of the folks from the country down here picking up supplies, he made an interesting comment. He said, Philip and Milesville and the surrounding area has created a very hardy people. People that live a long life, but it's also wearisome. Than maybe they should be. The wearisome or whether it's with your crops, whether it's out spraying or fertilizing, whether it's working on fence, all of that takes a toll on the body. That day in and day out, that this wearisome, continuing to fill our day with all of these things shows. More than one can say. You know what? Solomon's absolutely right here. You can't quantify how much this type of lifestyle and those that work around us, we can't quantify how much stress and how much pressure and how much hard, laborious work that it brings. Entire lifetimes out in the field. It creates a